Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. All right, today we are going to be getting more into the spine here. So what I want to do today is primarily go over the anatomy of the spine and then the movements of the spine here. So first off, a couple things we got to do. I'm gonna just kind of go over your assignments here. All right. First thing, your project is due, well, in 2 weeks. So on the 26th, it's going to be due. So make sure that you are completing your final paper. Everyone that's turned in your rough draft, I've gone over and given you a lot of feedback for it. One of the biggest things I've seen with most of your papers is that you're spending kind of a little bit too much time with, say, like a lot of background stuff. And it's okay if you include some background information, but you want to get straight into what the actual technology is that you're researching. So that's the big thing there. So just get straight away into what you're doing with the technology, the positives and drawbacks of it, and then really your future implications. So you want to say what this technology means for the future. For the most part though, the content's good, it's just you got to really condense a lot of it. And remember that you need to have at least 2 credible sources. And again, just for some clarity, let me just put that in here. So a credible source is going to be one that contains a DOI number. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier, but that just means that it is a scholarly publication. You only get a DOI if you have published work. So it's going to be something that's academic if you find a DOI number. The main thing, and like if you use, like, say, websites that are scholarly, like if you use like .edu websites, typically those are going to be okay. The thing I really want you staying away from is sites that are selling a product. So if you're basing all of your information on a website where it's a company selling the product, that's really not going to be appropriate for this. All right, so that's that. Remember that I have changed the late submissions. So if you don't want to do this, let me know. Otherwise, the new late submission policy is 10% off of the first day, and then 2 days or more, 20% off. And then I'm accepting all late work until the last day of class, or I guess the last day of the semester. So May 10th, which is a Sunday. That'll be the last day I accept all your work unless you have an accommodation or I've given you any other kind of extension or whatnot. Now, this is done so you guys don't have to like rush and submit something poorly just to get it in on time. I'd much rather you take a day late or 2 or more and get me quality work as opposed to rushing in on time and giving me something that's really not that good. The other thing too is that I'll still give you a grade of 0 until you submit the assignment. So this is more of a placeholder, meaning that when you turn in something, or I'm sorry, when you have something late, even if it's a day late, I'm going to put a 0 in there because that's what your grade currently is because you haven't submitted it. As soon as you submit that, I will give you whatever grade you earned. So don't be alarmed if you get a 0 or have a bunch of zeros. As long as you turn in that work, I will give you credit for it. With that said, you know, I really would not encourage you to try to wait until the very last minutes, like that last weekend, to try to do everything. All right, discussion topic here. Now, you have to do one of these topics. So you pick one of these three. And you're just going to answer that. So the three topics we have here, or the three questions you have here: how does poor posture, or I'm sorry, how does posture affect sports performance, and how can we correct poor posture? Compare two back and spine injuries that would be common to collegiate athletics, and how do both seated and standing posture affect your overall health? Now, we'll be getting into posture probably a little bit on Wednesday, if not next Monday, but we're really going to see how posture is going to affect you on and off the playing field here. And then for your homework assignment, and again, all of these are due the 26th. So 2 weeks you got. 4 questions here. So compare and contrast sit-ups with the knees bent versus the knees straight. So that means that with the knees bent, I'm doing a crunch just with my knees, like say, so if I were laying down on the ground, maybe, but my knees would be bent, I'd be laying down on the ground. My knees straight would be that my legs were straight out, feet are still on the ground though. So just how do those two positions differentiate or differ in terms of what you're doing with each muscle? All right, sit in a chair, proper posture, and again in slouch position. So proper posture, just in general, is going to be essentially ears over your shoulders, over your hips. So you want to have a straight line going up and down your body. And then if you go into a slouch position, that would typically be like leaning over, or if you're leaning back in your chair. And then you want to talk about what's going to happen or what's occurring at the 3 segments of your spine and what muscles assist with maintaining proper posture. We'll cover that today. Pick 3 abdominal exercises people use to increase abdominal strength. These can be with or without a machine. What are the muscles being worked? What position is cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine in throughout the motion? Could these exercises be harmful? If so, how? So pretty straightforward there. And you want to improve your posture. Describe 3 things you would tell someone to do or exercises to help improve your posture. Don't worry about this whole research one, technological advancement. I'm not too worried about that because you're already doing the your paper on the biotech thing. So don't worry about including that bit there. And actually, what I'll do just to make sure there's no issue here. Oops. I'm just going to real quick re-upload this so that no one gets confused. Okay. So now that should be gone. Perfect. Yeah, so don't worry about that second part. So I've erased that for you. And we'll keep going over this as we keep going forward. And then last thing here is the spine and postural analysis lab. And I've already gotten rid of all the questions that had to do with like an inclinometer or anything like that. I'll be going over this a lot more with you, so we'll go over all the different parts here. But this will be what will be due for you is going to be the movement analysis. You'll need to be able to answer all of those. Obviously, we're not going to be doing all of the ranges of motion or the manual muscle tests in person, but you should know how to put the goniometer, where to put the tape measure, that kind of thing. So stationary arm, mobile arm axis rotation, that's where do you put the goniometer and what muscles cause these motions. With the tape measure, you're really simple. It's just going to be where do you put the tape measure. And again, I'll be going over those with you. The tape measure ones are going to be real easy. I mean, it's just really as simple as can you tell the difference between what a tape measure says when it's, say, if it's here versus if it's here, kind of thing. So all it is just reading the differences there. There's absolutely no guesswork with it. It's not like a goniometer where it could be, if I'm looking at a goniometer and I see a measurement, I have one line that's pointing here, I have another line that's pointing here, and which one is it? Because they say different numbers. Nope, tape measure, super easy, barely an inconvenience. So we'll be going over those as well. And with that said, let's kind of get into it here. Sorry, I'm just kind of trying to blow my face up as much as I can. All right. So again, with the spine, we have 3 different segments that we're worried about. Now, granted, with the spine, you do have 5 total segments. So you have a cervical spine, thoracic spine, lumbar, sacrum, and coccyx. So you have 5 segments. The ones we're most concerned about, though, are these top 3, because those are the ones that move, or at least they move with the spine. The sacrum moves with the pelvis, so it does not move with the spine. The coccyx doesn't move at all. Coccyx is your tailbone. That should not move at all. If it does, you are not going to feel good. The only time the coccyx typically moves is when you are a female giving birth, and that's about it. But your coccyx is right where your ass crack starts. So that's where that is. But we are most concerned with these 3 segments here: cervical, thoracic, lumbar. So you have 24 vertebrae that are actively moving in your spine. 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. You eat breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 5. And with this here, oops, sorry. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I got a phone call. I really need to start putting on like a do not disturb on my phone. See, this is just on the side here. So I have my Park computer, my Park laptop here, and it is, it works, but the volume doesn't work on it. So I actually have, a webcam on there, plus I'll be able to talk to you through, the computer, but the volume for whatever reason just quit working. Like nothing coming in, nothing going out, that kind of thing, which can't really use it. So what I do is I have my, on this here, this one here, I'm showing you my computer screen. This here is my phone so that you can see and hear me. So that's kind of a little bit of a workaround now, but whatever. Anyways, so getting back here, your cervical vertebrae, that is your neck. Your thoracic vertebrae is your thorax or your rib cage, and your lumbar vertebrae is your lower back. The way that you tell where one starts and one ends is your ribs. all of your thoracic vertebrae have a rib coming off of them. If it doesn't have a rib and it's above the thoracic spine, then it's your neck, it's your cervical spine. If it doesn't have a rib and it's below your thoracic spine, it is your lumbar. So that's pretty simple. So all you really have to remember is that your thoracic spine has ribs attached to it. That's it. The only two vertebrae you need to know by name are your top two, axis and atlas. Axis is C1, atlas is C2. The way you name all of your vertebrae is just by number and position. So cervical vertebrae, you call C1 through C7. Your thoracic vertebrae, you call T1 to T12. And your lumbar vertebrae, you call L1 to L5. So L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, you have 5 of those. So that's how you name all of your vertebrae. Now, here's 2 little bits of information that are going to help you, and I'm actually going to go over this again when we go to the actual lab portion. C7, where you flex your neck, you're going to see the most prominent. So if I flex my neck, and I feel down the back of my neck, where I feel a big bump, that first big bump, that's C7. That's the end of my neck. It's going to be roughly a little bit above shoulder height. And L4 is going to be your iliac crest. So where your hip bone is, if you went straight behind you to the middle of your back, that would be L4. So then just below that would be L5. Again, we'll go over that as we get into the actual lab portion. But atlas is C1, axis is C2. Those are the only 2 you need to remember by name. So atlas, C1, axis, C2. Don't worry about any of the ligaments. So any of the ligaments, don't worry about it. They're all there to help with maintaining a straight spine, but they're just really for support. So don't worry about all of those. I'm going to get into the intervertebral discs in a little bit. Now, I want to get into here the actual movements and the muscles that do that. You have 4 movements that occur in your spine. You have flexion, extension, lateral flexion, and rotation. You do not have any internal or external rotation. You do not have abduction or adduction. So the spine is your midline, and anything that is talking about ab or adduction refers to going away or coming back towards midline. Well, if you're moving your midline, you're always going away from midline, or you're always actually staying on midline, because if your midline's moving, you don't get away from your midline. So there is no ab or adduction. There is no internal or external rotation. All you're going to say is you have right lateral flexion. That means I am laterally flexing to my right side. You can also call this side bending. And I have right and left rotation. So I'm just rotating to my right or left side. And you have these same movements for all 4 segments. For all 3 segments. So lumbar, cervical, and thoracic spine all have these same 4 movements. The thoracic spine has the least amount of movement because it has your rib cage attached to it. So because your rib cage is part of your thoracic spine, it has less movement. Your lumbar spine and your cervical spine have the most movement. And really your cervical spine has the most movement. I mean, I'm sure some of you can probably move, like say your head almost, onto like your ear almost onto your shoulder kind of thing. You really can't do that with the lumbar spine because you got your hip and pelvis there, which are going to prevent it from moving. So again, flexion extension in the spine refers to straight or forward backward movement. That's always going to be in the sagittal plane. Your lateral flexion is your side bending, and that is always going to be your frontal plane. And rotational movement is going to be your transverse plane. So pretty simple there. So now, if I look at my full spine, side bending is just this lateral tilt side to side. I can rotate any way I want. If I bend down and touch my toes, or if I lean all the way back, flexion extension. So whenever you talk about flexion extension, you are talking about forward, backward motion. When you talk about lateral flexion, you are side to side. Rotation, you're rotating. Pretty straightforward there. And just as I said, there you go. All right, muscles you need to know. Just as though the traps always move the scapula, the traps will also always move the C-spine and the T-spine. Deltoids really no. Lats are going to be T and L. Levators are going to be C. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, teres major, nope. Rhomboids are going to be primarily T, but a very little bit of C. So there's your big muscles. If it is crossed out, you do not need to know it. The rule with the spinal movements is if a muscle attaches to the spine, it moves the spine. Pretty simple, right? So anything that attaches to the spine, that moves the spine. Deltoid does not attach to the spine, does not move the spine. Your rotator cuff does not attach to the spine, doesn't move the spine. Your rhomboids attaches to the spine, moves the spine. Lats attach to the spine, they move the spine. Traps attach to the spine, move the spine. So these are the big muscles that move your spine. And really straightforward, wherever they are positioned, that's the part of the spine that they move. So because your lats are attaching here and down, they do not move anything above that. It's the same kind of principle you would have if you had a spinal cord injury. So in general, like if you have a spinal cord injury, wherever that injury occurs, let's say I had a T12 injury, let's call that. So this is T12 right here. It's where my first rib comes out. If I had a T12 spinal cord injury, everything from here down is going to be affected. So I'll probably be paralyzed from the shoulders down. Nothing above that is affected though, because everything above that doesn't touch that level. So with my lats, because they come right about here, if I didn't have, let's say I had, no lat movement, that's not going to affect my cervical spine because the lats do not connect to my cervical spine. So wherever the muscle attaches, that's the part of the spine that moves. Now, the major movers you have, so these are our prime movers. Your sternocleidomastoid, you may see this abbreviated as SCM. This here is going to primarily be the main thing that moves my neck. So you have two of these. So even though it's only showing one, you have two. So your sternocleidomastoid, if you were to like flex your neck like, and you look kind of at the side, you could see how there's this bulging out right there. And then again, kind of on the side here, and you can see where that neck flexes. And that is my sternocleidomastoid. This does all of your movements for your neck. So C-spine, sternocleidomastoid. If I use both of these together, so both of these together, that's going to flex my neck. Now I should make the distinction that this does all flexion. So your SCM, because it goes back to forward, it's going to move your head forward. So this here, forward flexion, lateral flexion, and it's going to help with rotation. Anytime I do lateral flexion or rotation, I am only moving one side. And this goes for any muscle in the spine. So if I'm doing lateral flexion, I'm only using this side of my muscle to move. This side here actually acts as an antagonist because it's trying to oppose that movement. So whenever you do a lateral flexion or a rotation, only one of those muscles are actually working. But SCM, flexion of the neck. Your erector spinae, these are your most important postural muscles. These are also deep muscles. So if I looked at this picture here, my erector spinae muscles are underneath all of these. The word erector means upright, so your erector muscles keep you upright. Spinae refers to the spine. And these are a group of three muscles that keep you upright. So you have your iliocostalus, your longissimus, and spinalis. It's not so important that you remember the individual muscles. What's more important is that you know collectively what the erector spinae muscles do. And those do two things. They do back and neck extension, and they keep upright posture. That's the major two things they do. Now, they do have some lateral flexion ability. But their main thing, E, you want to think extension. That's their main role. If you hurt your back, especially if you hurt your lower back, you are hurting one of these muscles. Because these, as you can kind of see here, you notice how there's lots and lots of little muscles. It's because these aren't all one giant muscle belly. Like you look at, let's say, you know, your deltoid, that's all one big muscle there, you know? It has one tendon, it has one, you know, major attachment point. Granted, there's three heads to it, but it's all one connected muscle belly. You know, you have one giant muscle there kind of thing. You look at these connect all the way, connect to all your ribs, all of your vertebrae. They're almost like spaghetti strings. They all act together, but it's like they're all individual muscles. So each one of these connections is kind of an individual muscle branching off. If you pick up your car keys the wrong way, you can throw your back out. And it's because these muscles are so small. So again, erector spinae muscles keep you upright. These are your muscles of posture. So they're going to extend your back and neck, and they keep you upright. If these weren't working correctly, you would be slouching forward. And again, this just shows all their connections. If you were to say these insert and you put any vertebrae on there, you would be correct. All right, splenius, don't really worry about that. Your scalenes, these do the same thing as the sternocleidomastoid. They're just underneath it. Don't worry about these muscles here. But yeah, so the major muscles you should know, like I said, you should know the Erector Spinae muscles, and you should know your sternocleidomastoid. Those are your two major spinal moving muscles. Now, additionally, you need to know these bigger ones here. So you need to remember traps, lats, rhomboids, and levator scapula. With those, though, you should already be somewhat familiar with them because those also are going to be shoulder and arm movers. Now, your core muscles or your abdominal muscles, again, these are all going to move your body in the direction that the muscles are facing. So your rectus abdominis, that's your six-pack abs. Coincidentally, these are also bacon. So if you're eating bacon, you are eating pork belly. Pork belly is your rectus abdominis. So all these do are flexion of the spine. That's it. If you want to get rectus abdominis to work, you do crunches. That's it. The muscle fibers you can see are facing straight up and down. If they're facing straight up and down, they can only move you straight up and down. They do not move you side to side at all. If you change your positioning, so instead of being straight up and down, I move any which other way, my rectus abdominis muscle isn't going to be my prime mover. So if you only did crunches, like if that's the only ab exercise you did, you would primarily be training rectus abdominis and transversus abdominis, because both of these, as you can see, have their muscle fibers going up and down. If you look at the other muscles we have here, external oblique and internal oblique, whoops, sorry. Internal oblique, external oblique. So this here, internal, this here, external, that's transversus, sorry. They are side to side, okay? So side to side here and at a kind of a diagonal there. And just think, if you're ever training those muscles, you're always doing something off to the side. If I do a crossover crunch, if I do a side crunch, if I'm doing my bicycle crunches, so where I'm, getting side to side, that kind of thing. The key word here is side. So obliques mean side. The movement they do, so rectus abdominis is going to be flexion. Your obliques are going to be rotation and lateral flexion. So if you ever do, like, say, your Russian twist, you're working on your obliques. But again, look at the way the muscle fibers face. Obliques are facing side to side and kind of diagonally. Rectus abdominis is going to be straight up and down. So rectus abdominis, flexion, obliques, lateral flexion, rotation. Your quadratus lumborum, we've talked about this before, but this is your deep back, lower back muscle here that's your primary mover here. This here goes from T12 to your posterior superior iliac spine. And all this is really doing is it assists with lateral flexion, especially for the lumbar spine. And it does a little bit of rotation, but primarily this is going to be your deep muscle of posture for your lower back. And really that lateral flexion is your major mover for that. So that's your really anatomy in a nutshell there. We're kind of close to time, so instead of getting started on something else, I'll kind of leave it at that. On Wednesday, I'm going to get into all of the problems you can have with your back. We're going to go over the disc issues you may have or may hopefully not have, and then we'll move on from there. So that's everything new I have for you here today. So thank you all for getting through that with me. And if you guys have any questions, I will stick around till you all leave. If not, I will see you all on Wednesday.